Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well, then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. There's this concept I've seen used a lot among my clients, among colleagues, friends, and I'll admit, I just learned that it has a proper term. You know me, I'm not one for jargon. So I don't look for new labels to slap on things that people won't understand. But I knew this was a good approach. But I actually looked this up and it's called penetration pricing. And like, aside from the like 12-year-old boy giggles, okay, hear me out. Penetration pricing is actually a really cool strategy. And if you take nothing else away, you learned a new word for this that you can now use with your friends to talk about something you learned, from the Keep What You Earn podcast. So, penetration pricing, what is it? It's when you set an initially low price to attract customers quickly and gain market share with the plans to increase your price at a later date. Your goal is to increase customer adoption, build brand awareness, and create long term customer relationships. This is, however, a little bit different from loss leader pricing, which is about selling a service at a loss intentionally in order to upsell another. So let me just distinguish loss leader from penetration pricing there. So when would you actually use this? So if you think about it, it's like, wait, Shannon, you're talking about having a low entry price point with the intention to raise it later. Do you know how freaking hard that is to then justify the value at a higher price point later? That's gonna be so hard to do an uphill climb on. Also, how do you know you're making profit on that? Well, it's really good to use this when you have, I would say, a highly competitive market, when your customers are price sensitive. So you want to get them in because they'll be attracted to this rate as long as it's super well communicated, it's limited time only, right? So, for example, let's use this. I know you've seen this. How many of you have seen founders rates at gyms? Yeah. So when you think about founders rates at gyms, when you go to a new gym, and I actually used to consciously think about this, we had a new gym open up in my hometown in Connecticut. And I was thinking, oh, I should go join this gym because I bet they have ridiculously low membership rates and they'll grandfather me in for at least a year at this rate before they up it. Because always they give you some sort of founders rate because they got to get butts in the door. Their objective is to get more people in, and so this also works really well with subscription-based models where retention is the name of the game. So anytime you have a membership or subscription model, you want to be looking at potentially founders rates or early bird, like in the early stage of this membership, just getting people in the door and get people in. Maybe it's a community. This is also key. If you have a community that's paid, really basically offering people to come in at a ridiculously low price in order to attract more people, because more people being there is a more attractive price driver. So you want to be willing to invest that for the sake of retention. Another one is service businesses that rely on a lot of word of mouth referrals. You want to be able to leverage this and pull this lever when you need to in order to get new people in the door. And I would say where I call it industries where switching costs are low. And by switching costs, I mean the cost to change your mind on a provider, the cost to leave and go somewhere else. So, for example, a marketing agency, or a consultant, or I don't know, think of any service where like it's not super sticky because they're not really deeply embedded, where you could kind of give or take, you could go month to month, even if it's like a bookkeeper, right? As much as I don't want to admit that that might not be sticky for some people. If you think about it, you go, well, at any point, I could just cancel this contract and I could give it to somebody else. And it wouldn't cost me anything for that downtime, really, in terms of me suffering. I wouldn't suffer greatly from that downtime. So when you have those low switching costs, then people have a very low barrier to let you go. There's no reason for them to keep you on if they're unsatisfied, which you don't really want to do anyway. But If you are in that position, you may want to consider this penetration pricing approach so that you can actually get people to retain. And you know what's an interesting that this is not necessarily penetration pricing, but I have to bring up this example because I thought it was brilliant. I used to teach Zumba for about 10 years. And I talked to this gym owner, the studio owner, and she had this very unusual policy, I'll say, uncommon policy, where a lot of gyms were offering your first class for free just to get people in the door. That might be considered penetration pricing, or first class half off, or if you bring a friend, you each get 50% off, whatever it is, like bring a friend for free. That can be considered like penetration pricing. But what this person did was she offered second class free. And I was like, why would you do that? What does that mean? Like, why not first class? And she said, well, people are motivated to try. You know, a lot of people are willing to pay the drop in rate. They hear there's a new studio in town. They'll come in, they'll try one class because it's a low risk. There are low stakes. If they come in, pay 12, $15 for a class, that's the most they're going to lose along with that hour of their time if they didn't have a good time. And people are willing to make that investment and take a chance. But what they realized was that from a retention standpoint, and I know this firsthand, this is so true. If you get somebody to come to your class 3 times, then they're basically your student in perpetuity. It doesn't mean they're coming to all of your classes, but it means that you've now probably won them over where they're going to come to more and more and more. You're probably going to resell them every single month. They'll become a member or they'll subscribe. That was like the rule of thumb was, okay, after 3 classes, they're in. So why this person offered second class free was because she knew that first class was easy, you know, that's fine, pay your rate. She may even have done like a reduced rate on the first class, but then second class was free. So basically, you had nothing to lose by coming again. The show up rate was insane. People who had first class free, who were then expected to pay for their second class, if they had anything less than 100% damn good time, they may not come back because they only went because it was free. But if they come in and try that first class and they pay the fee and they had even a 75% good time, they were a little bit shaky on the fact they didn't know the choreography. They were a little embarrassed that everybody seemed to know it except them, right? But they get second class free. Well, they've already seen all the choreography. They've already seen everything. They've met people. What's another class? I'll come back. I'll come back on Tuesday. And they come back for number 2. And now people are greeting them by name. Now people are saying, hey, you actually really got that move. And they're more confident. And now they're probably going to come for one more, at least one more. But once they come for that third one, you got them because now they know the choreography. They've seen it 3 times. They feel like they're mastering it. It's familiar. They're singing along with some of the lyrics to the songs, maybe because they've heard repetition and it's become a habit. So, all that to tell you that when you talk about your pricing, you have to get really creative on when things are sticky and whether your goal is retention or simply revenue generation out the gate. If your goal is retention, then you have to be willing to sacrifice short term revenue for long term retention. And that's the name of the game. Retention creates customer value, retention creates long term value, lifetime value that increases. And in my opinion, a guaranteed retention period for a customer is worth a lot more than spot revenue.
Hey, Shannon here, and I have a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying this podcast and enjoying this episode, please leave us a review on your podcast platform, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Amazon, any of them, and let us know if you're enjoying the show. One of your biggest takeaways, we would really, really appreciate it. Okay, back to the show.
It's concepts like this that enable you to stop turning into simply a hustling sales machine, which, hey, more power to you if you like that stuff. I like the idea that I can sell when I want to, I can push when I want to, but I don't have to in order to put food on the table. I don't have to be hustling every single day to sell. I don't have to exhaust myself. So it really works best when you're talking about retention forward models, subscriptions, and so on. I think it works really well with services too. So there's a lot of pros to this, right? It rapidly builds your customer base, it establishes some brand credibility, it gives you some familiarity in the market, and it encourages some type of adoption of the habit to try your service. It gives them a little sampler platter, if you will, and definitely creates opportunities for upselling and cross selling your other products. So, what's the downside? Well, Number one is depending on how you position it, it could set unrealistic expectations of your prices going forward. And they may actually attract price sensitive customers who only join because of the low price point and then complain when the expense is higher later. And the price expectation, if it's not set that you're going to increase it after X period of time, it could be a bit of a strain on the customer and cause less lifetime value for each of them. It can also strain your profitability and cash flow, obviously, especially if you're small. If you're not making enough to cover your basic costs, then that can be problematic. So, I do recommend that you implement this, maybe not across the board, but maybe for a couple of your offers that you want to particularly grow. And I also don't recommend that you overexert yourself on the front end, especially if a lot of your costs are on the front end of services. So, I'll give you an example. If I did this for an accounting firm, it's almost like saying, "Hey, I'm gonna charge you less for the first couple of months during onboarding," when here's the interesting thing, it kinda makes sense from a customer standpoint because they're not really seeing the dashboards and the information yet. However, it's where you're heavily concentrating all of your labor, all of your time, all of your energy, setting everything up, getting everything really good to go, that if you're not getting paid for that, that could be a big strain on your cash flow if you have to wait several months before you actually start realizing your true margins. But you have fronted a lot of money and labor in order to get that all set up. This is the same thing with like construction, same thing with, you know, marketing agencies, accounting firms, whatever. A lot of different firms, a lot of different businesses have this type of model. So you have to be really careful about that. And you have to make sure that your margins are such where you could tolerate this. And I think you also risk, of course, the image of devaluing your service if the low price indicates lower quality. So obviously that's a factor. So in order to implement this, what you want to do is you want to have a limited time introductory pricing. You have to make it super clear though that there is an expiration on this limited time and that you have to actually stand behind that. I can't tell you how many businesses I've seen that say limited time only and then like 3 years later it still says limited time only. And I'm like, "What's the limit? What's the limit on time?" Because, like, I don't understand. And what you might wanna do is also when you communicate the limited time, you may also want to pull one of these, like, act now and will include. So, bundling your services or product at a discount to add perceived value to this price. So, if you're coming in with a lower price point and saying, "Hey, this is like a gym membership, founder's rate, we're chopping off half the membership price, but you also get, you know, 5 free smoothies or a free smoothie punch card, the juice bar." That's pretty cool. Okay, cool. So whatever you wanna do that would add perceived value, but maybe not create a ton of extra cost for you. So that way they're getting perceived value, not devaluing it, but they're also going to be able to enjoy that lower price point. And also consider referral incentives. So if you actually rely on a lot of word of mouth marketing, maybe there's a way to unlock this discounted price through helping them in another way. This is actually used a lot, and I'm not just talking about early stage to later stage, but there's a restaurant in town here that does ladies' night. And in particular, ladies' night means that women get free well drinks during the night in these little plastic cups. It's great. And they get that if they share the post promoting ladies' night. So you get in, ladies' night is free drinks for ladies. However, you do have to show that you shared the post or leave a review in order to be able to get it, which is, in my opinion, more than fair, not to mention brilliant, because now you have people who are constantly sharing, constantly promoting, and you have this constant flow of traffic of people seeing your stuff and then having it just jack up in the algorithm. So I think that you want to consider doing something like that that is low stakes, low cost, but could be big impact. You also want to think about your transition to higher pricing later down the line. Maybe a gradual price increase after the customers realize the value. So maybe if you have the ability to manage individual customer pricing, you communicate that after X months, we're going to start to transition you into full value. You may also look at tiered pricing models where you can introduce a premium tier and they can upgrade. And you may also want to add some sort of exclusivity or an additional benefit to justify a price hike. So If you are in the introductory zone, like the basic plan of whatever it is, you can tell them that they're getting too big, they're outgrowing the basic plan and they need to upgrade, you know? Gusto does this, and I have 0 problem with Gusto doing this. They're an amazing payroll company. Uh, please use them. I recommend them a lot. And by the way, we'll make sure there's a link in there. It's for you to join. But Gusto does this brilliantly. So Gusto will recommend like the basic plan for you, the core plan or the core elements. I forget what they're called now, but they'll recommend a core set of features. And then once you get big enough, once you have enough people on your team, once you kind of outgrow that, the reps might reach out to you and say, "Hey, you might be a good candidate for this other option that we have, which has more managed HR, which has more performance metrics in it." Like, you might be getting to that point where you have enough people on your team that it's really hard to manage this outside of a core system, or your benefits and so on need to be in here. So if so, we have this product that you can upgrade to. And I actually really appreciate that about SaaS companies. I appreciate that about subscriptions where they say, "Hey, it seems like you're happy with our product or service, but maybe you don't know you can actually upgrade." And that's a really important thing. So I've talked about a few of these things. I think that SaaS and subscriptions really work with this. Any sort of, professional services, fitness and gyms, anything like that, they totally work. So you really have to make sure that you're clearly communicating how you're using this, that you're standing behind it, but also you want to be able to have that leeway to use this intentionally and to not devalue your brand or your business by implementing this the wrong way, or by making multiple attempts at this where people are now trained that if they wait long enough, they'll get some type of reduced price. You have to be careful about that. So as you're using this, just be mindful of that and think about how you could leverage this in your business possibly.
When it comes to scaling your business, your core offer is the foundation of your success. If you're finding that your margins aren't exactly supporting the cost of running your business, well, it's worth taking a closer look at your pricing strategy and your direct costs to hack it and figure out what your constraint is. Sometimes all it takes is small adjustments, like fine-tuning your pricing or streamlining your expenses. These can make a huge difference. Join me for a power session and let's dive deeper into the profitability of your core offer. All the information is in the show notes below.